when certain things happen, obviously you hire someone, that throws up a whole new range of tasks that we've got to do. You've mentioned it already, set up, we've got to buy additional equipment, got to set up proper tools, because the way that we work and the way that we want teams to work is going to be slightly different. This way we've just kind of been writing it down like to-do lists on Slack and things like that. Now we need to have time tracking elements in place, organisational project management through Asana, all of that put in place so that from day one, when our new starter comes into the business, we get into good habits.
In general, when we see with our clients as well, which is when you start opening up the floor to marketing, or you ask people for contributions and things like that, what tends to happen is you then have a bunch of different people talking about a bunch of different stuff, and it becomes very unclear what that marketing message is. So we spend a lot of time building out, again, I'd say a framework, not a process, to, if you're creating a piece of content, like what is that pillar? Does it fall into one of the 3 to 4 pillars that we want to talk about? In fact, one of the biggest drawbacks at the moment of something like ChatGPT is it isn't able to cite sources, or it isn't able to give you links out. I'm 95% certain that's going to change, right? Like if ChatGPT wants to be this essentially conductor of search moving forward, taking market share away from Google, whatever it may be, it's going to have to provide links out to deeper context and contextualization and things like that. Surely you'd want to be at the forefront of that in the sense of,
Hello and welcome to episode number 17 of Building. It's our podcast that charts our journey to starting and scaling a growth marketing agency called 1225. I'm Brendan, and I'm joined as ever by my co-founder Harry. And for the record, the recording date is the 7th of August 2023. Harry, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. It's been quite a week again. I think we're probably changing our podcast schedule around it a little bit, right? So it's gone from every Friday to every Monday at the minute. But I guess the good thing about that is it gives us a full week to review. And it's crazy how much happens in a week. Like I think on Friday, I felt like, we're really behind. Like the to-do list is starting to pile up. But then when you have like the weekend to reflect on it, and like today, for example, we've typed out all the things that we're going to be talking about, we still get through a hell of a lot, even when it feels like we're not. Things are going incredibly well. You have a lot that I know you're going to run through in terms of status updates and things like that. But long answer to the question, which is, yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Excitement. I think as we go on in this journey, I keep getting more and more excited because these mini milestones or little things that you wanted to get to in certain points, we're doing all of that and more, and it's helping me get my head around being a business owner at the same time. And I think this week, the past week, should I say, has been really busy. We know that I was tilting, as we like to say, at times a bit with the workload, but we've got that all organised. And then actually being able to reflect on a couple of the achievements of the past week. So the first one is the fact that we've hired someone, which is massive.
It's crazy, isn't it? What I'm most surprised about that is like how quick it has been. Like if we look at the first couple of applicants we had, and like things were pretty slow to start with, right? Like we didn't have many applicants at all on LinkedIn. I think one of the factors for that was, we're a small business, we're starting out, we have costs elsewhere. We didn't want to really spend a penny on recruitment. Now, some people could say that's short-sighted, but I think for us, it was the right thing to do. So we didn't put any money at all into LinkedIn jobs. Problem with that is you essentially have no organic visibility. So the number of impressions and things like that we were getting on the post was incredibly low. You had the great idea of switching and putting something out on Indeed. And from there, we had a couple of incredibly strong applicants, and we've been able to hire.
Yeah, that makes it real for me. Having someone else in the team, you can start to visualize what it's going to be like in the future, because with the two of us, it's the same. It's like the future looks like it does now. Whereas with other people being confident enough to take what is a slight risk in joining us at this very early stage of our growth journey, and to be actually genuinely excited about what we talked about, it gives you massive confidence. So I'm excited to to have him on board. You know, there'll be others in future. We spoke to a number of very good candidates and people we're going to keep in touch for later rounds of recruitment. So, yeah, very exciting on that point. But I think as well, and I hope you've got a nice sound effect ready for this next bit, but episode 17, and Harry has finally signed a client. Hey!
There he is. Look at that. And the crowd go wild. Yeah, it's taken, what's that done? So that's episode 17. So 17 weeks it has taken me to finally sign a client. I kept saying to you every week on this podcast and in person as well, but I felt we were getting closer to a deal. But it never was quite across the line. But finally, we have it across the line. I think the funny story on that is actually that last week I should have been sat here saying that I signed a client, but our contracts, I wouldn't say confusing, but you have to sign in two places, and the client only signed one of the boxes. So we weren't fully signed until this week, but I have finally signed a client, which means I finally have delivery to do. So it's a very nice feeling. I think the score is still massively weighted in your favor. Not that we're counting, but we are. In fact, I think you suggested that we have some kind of whiteboard in the office to show our new hire as well, that you are leading the way. But yeah, finally signed a client, and I'm very happy, and I'm very happy to be working with them as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, even on like this first site that we've been given. But they're a large company, growing company, and they have multiple businesses. So getting in with the group is an opportunity for us as well. So yeah, I'm very excited to be starting.
Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations. We knew that would take a bit longer, to be fair, and it's probably a potentially meteor kind of source of revenue and growth for us. So fair play for bringing that in. Is that why you've changed your tune as well on the old mini fridge in the office?
Yeah, exactly that. Well, that's not quite true. I've been in a better mood since I finally signed a client. That's for sure. But no, like we know, small business, the challenge of every business, regardless size, really is cash flow. And we knew that our tightest month for cash flow would be month one, so July the 1st to the end of July. Given we had a not insignificant amount of startup costs, like a lot of people speak about when you start agencies or service-based businesses, you don't need a huge amount of cash flow, which is technically true, but we spent a lot of money on things that you don't necessarily need to, but we deemed necessary for us. So like the office and the deposit for the office, or the videos that everyone has seen that have been released. Working with George, they came with fees that we hadn't necessarily factored in. So we had to wait until we had month one's invoices back to enable that cash flow to do a few things. I'd say big things, such as making a hire. That cash flow has enabled us to do that. Or slightly smaller things, but arguably just as big for you, which was getting a fridge. So yeah, so we now have month one's invoices in the bank, which means that we can go buy a fridge tomorrow.
Happy days. Yeah, looking forward to that. Nice early start at a retailer, shall we say, and yeah, excited to see you try and carry that off into the office whilst I go and park up somewhere. So perfect. And with that, on the kind of status updates, you kind of mentioned it. Obviously, we've got the invoices in for the first month, so cash flow is getting there, definitely. And you had a bit of a recap on finances and what the plans were going to be last week.
Yeah, I mean, we're massively ahead of where we thought we were going to be, which is obviously only a good thing. I think if we're looking at where we're at from a financial perspective, and obviously we'll be, like, the podcast is in a weird cadence here where like we might release a July review which goes over finances and things like that way before we get anywhere close to releasing episode 17. So like there's that weird thing happening. But as we speak about, we're probably like somewhere between 3 and 6 months ahead. So you could kind of push the forecast that way as well if you wanted to. We're not going to, because we think the growth that we start to forecast towards month 6 and onwards is quite steep. So keeping it as we are right now is probably about right, as we suspect we might have like a quieter month as an example and things like that. But it has meant we've been able to bring hires forward, which has meant obviously we're bringing a lot of cost forward as well. So had to spend a bit of time getting all those costs factored in, understanding, okay, well, we had an average salary of X within our forecast for the first year. Like, we have some people over that, we have some people under that. So what does that look like in terms of like actual cost of the business? that's all been factored in, like pension costs. And then like we do things such as bespoke pie packages, or everyone gets roughly 30 to 40 quid a month to be spending on food and drink for the office. So all of those costs have to get factored in. So I spent a bit of time going through all of that to understand what was essential, what could be cut out so we're running very efficiently, what things do we need to invest more in. And again, I think we'll talk about that maybe in a bit of detail when we get to the building section of the podcast. But TLDR on it is financially we're in a very strong place after only 1 month of trading, which is very good. We were very grateful to have been paid pretty early from one of our clients for August as well. So cash flow is looking very strong. It's enabling us to hire, which is great. Enabling us to buy a fridge, which is also great. And also enabling us, I'd say arguably most importantly, given we have one, I mean, technically maybe it's been a very good period in the hiring, probably two people coming in. It's allowing us to invest in some foundations that perhaps otherwise you wouldn't at this stage, right? So again, we'll speak about it later, but like time tracking software, project management software, automation tools and things like that, we don't really need to invest in them now. But if we can get those foundations really set for when, the first member of the team, the second member of the team, the fifth, etc., comes in, it'll all just be natural to everybody, which makes scaling a lot easier. So yeah, again, a long answer. I seem to be giving you these today, but we're in a good place financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And when certain things happen, obviously you hire someone, that throws up a whole new range of tasks that we've got to do. You've mentioned it already, set up, we've got to buy additional equipment, got to set up proper tools, because the way that we work and the way that we want teams to work is going to be slightly different. This way we've just kind of been writing it down like to-do lists on Slack and things like that. Now we need to have time tracking elements in place, organizational project management through Asana, all of that put in place so that from day one, when our new starter comes into the business, we get into good habits, because it's very easy to maintain habits, whereas trying to change a habit of a lifetime, you went through this at the old place, is much more difficult. So what we want to do, and this is advice that we've been given by other people as well, set your stall out early in terms of be organized from the off, and it's so much easier to maintain. And I think we'll go through all of that in the kind of next section as well. But with that hiring as well, certain bits and pieces that we thought, we wouldn't have to do this for a while, let's put that on the back burner, we now have to do, like a staff handbook. So yeah, I'm going to be drafting out a staff handbook over this week. So looking forward to that. But again, it's interesting. We can put our own slant on these things and make sure that it fits us and what we're trying to do as well. So plenty to do on that front. And I think we'll come on to marketing plans in building as well. And finally, status update. We spent Thursday last week at Blend in Caversham Reading area with Phil, one of the co-founders. Phil spent half a day with us, and it was literally a bit like this podcast. It was just a chat, just going through different operational bits and pieces, finding out the ways that they do it, the ways that we're planning on doing things, and just asking loads of questions. So before we kind of dig into that, just a big thank you to Phil for your time and for all of the information. Very, very kind of you to do that. Hopefully we'll get Phil on this podcast in a couple of weeks' time, just to kind of check back in, see the progress that we've made operationally and so on. And hopefully it was useful to Phil and to Blend as well. And maybe we can keep going with that kind of thing in the future.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, like you say, Phil was incredibly generous with his time. And I do think it was a mutually beneficial day on the whole. I know we had like a 2.5 hour drive back, and we didn't really start talking about what the setup like for us from a operational perspective and from a team building perspective and things like that. So it really got us thinking about how we can do things. And you've been mentioning this a lot on the podcast and also in the office about the fact that, of course, we have views and opinions on how we're going to do things. But our, I guess, scope of thinking is limited to just our own experiences, right? So the more we can hear from other people around their challenges, that opens us up to different ways of thinking. So yeah, I really enjoyed the day. It gave us a lot to think about. It also gave us a lot of things like, you know what, we've already got that covered, or we've already experienced that before. And there was a lot of things that Phil was saying where we're like, yeah, we're very familiar with that challenge. We experienced it in previous roles and things like that. So yeah, I think he covered it well. Like, Phil was incredibly generous with his time. He did promise as well that he would come on the podcast. So that will happen in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, very, 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 very good day.
So yeah, as you can tell, busy kind of week last week. Some time out of the office, but obviously we've reflected on all of that, put plans into place across a number of different areas. And Harry, over to kind of building and obviously laying the foundations operationally, as it says in our show notes.
Yeah, we've spoken about this a lot again. I think I've started to listen back to all of the podcast episodes from episode 1 and through, and in like the second or third episode, we talk about the fact that I think we'll do a lot of things wrong, but I do think we have an opportunity to be one of the best run startup agencies in terms of like operationally that has been, just given our exposure to all the kind of operational challenges that business owners and agency owners face. And given the fact that we are hiring, means that we now really need to start accelerating those things. And this came from the conversation with Phil at Blend, and also with the work that I was working on prior to leaving to start 1225, is around capacity management and analyzing time tracking to understand where time is being spent. Are we billing clients the right amount? Are we doing things perhaps we shouldn't be doing? Is time being wasted on internal stuff when it shouldn't be, or whatever it may be, like looking for efficiencies, over-servicing, under-servicing, all those kind of things. And what Blend had said and versus what we experienced, the one commonality between it was it's very hard to make company-wide changes the bigger you get. So what we need to focus on is getting all of those processes down from employee number 1 all the way through to employee number 10 and to 20 and to 50 and maybe 100, like whatever it may be. We need to make sure we have those very strong foundations. So the reason that this is in the podcast today is very topical is that I spent a large chunk of time this morning looking at time tracking software for a few reasons. One of which, again, for full transparency, is the tools out there, they're quite expensive. So we were looking for, freemium versions or free to close to maybe a couple of dollars a month, whatever it may be, to understand what those tools offer versus tools that we're familiar with. We decided to take out a starter account or a trial account on Toggle, which is essentially Toggle Tracker, again, no surprise, time tracking piece of software. And what I started to realize as we were setting that up is there's an equation and a calculation that needs to be done versus like the time versus reward here. So yes, it is a lot cheaper than the software that we are used to running in our previous roles, but the learning curve and the time to understand every piece of that software versus being able to just pick up the other piece of software and run with it, and that maybe 20-30% premium you're paying for that, is going to take a while before we'd see our money back if we decided to go with a tool we haven't used before. So as much as it pains me at this stage in our journey to be putting out, I guess, not insignificant amount of money on these type of things, given cash flow and stuff like that, it 100% makes sense to just go with the things that we know, we understand, we see the value in, and understand the value versus, I guess, input equation. And that we know that as we scale, we're going to see return on that multiple times over. So yeah, I think there's a few lessons to be taken, one of which is the time versus reward. And it's easy to overlook cost as a business owner, right? Like I was going to say the actual cost, but the other way of looking at it is, as business owners, you're probably paying yourself close to minimum wage, at least in terms of salary, and then remuneration in different ways. Or in our case, like we're on very low salaries to start with before potentially scaling up. So if you're running it purely based on that, the equation isn't particularly favorable in terms of just spending time on it. You have to look at the opportunity cost. So for us, is it worth spending a day to 2 days, a month getting familiar with a piece of software for a couple of dollars difference versus could be out there doing sales outreach or working on proposals or adding genuine value. So there's that equation that needs to be run. And I think it's an equation that we haven't seen calculated too much from like consultants and things like that previously, whereby like everyone's time is billable. And if like we should be asking the question, like, are we being as efficient as possible with that time? Is it worth the energy? Yes or no. So just a few learnings there in terms of looking at input and your time versus the reward that you're going to get off the back of it.
Very good. Like it. Question time for you as well. So for me and for many other people that have worked with you in the past, know you well, you're very operationally minded and you like those kind of, look at HubSpot. I've been having a dig at you these past few weeks for being the HubSpot police and making sure the data's absolutely spot on. Like, you're very good at all of this, keeping it tidy, keeping it, in a place, good working order. So that's on one hand, say your right hand. But on the other hand, you tell me and you tell anyone who will listen, like, process kills creativity, hate process, hate all of that. How can you have a bit of both if you are the way you are with your kind of processes?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think the way that I describe them, though, is there is a difference between there's actually two parts of that. So there's a difference between a framework and a process. And 9 times out of 10, I'd massively push a framework over a process. So the way that we're describing those frameworks at the minute at 1225 is essentially swing your own swing, right? Like, as long as you're roughly following this model when it comes to sales, for example, or this model when it comes to client delivery, that's kind of fine. And if you're not, as long as you're getting results, that's also kind of fine. But if you aren't following that framework and you're not getting results, then let's bring back in line to that framework that we know works, right? That proven framework. So I think there's that process versus framework way of looking at it. But I think the second part to it is there is also a difference between process in terms of operational and administrative activities versus delivery. And when it comes, I could be wrong here, this is just my opinion, but when it comes to things like time tracking to analyze under or overspend or whatever it may be, I don't want people to be creative when it comes to that. I just want the cold hard data so we can understand what to do and make decisions off the back of it. Or when it comes to sales, again, I don't want creativity when it comes to, did that meeting take place? Yes or no? What are the next steps? We don't need creativity around that. What we need creativity on is okay, well, what is the strategy for this client to deliver success? What is the thing that is going to make this client close? Those kind of things require creativity. And I think, if you have a process for those, you then end up selling the same thing every time to a bunch of different clients, which then sounds great from it almost productizes the service. That sounds great on paper, but in reality, we know that not every client follows those same patterns, right? So I think the way that I would look at it is you have processes and you have frameworks. And they're very much in a way of thinking about client delivery versus administrative activities. And that's the exact same thing there, which is, do you need someone to be creative about a specific thing? If the answer to that is yes, probably not a process. If the answer to that is no, it probably is a process.
Fair. I like it. That helps. So we're getting there. We've got the foundations operationally. We're working on that. Obviously, I'll be focusing in as well on the operations around the hire, in a sense, kind of building a induction plan, staff handbook, all of those bits and pieces as well. So that question, time versus reward, process versus framework, is going to be asked a lot more over the next couple of weeks once we get set up on that front. The other area that you pushed a hell of a lot last week, and we sat down near the start of last week to talk about our marketing plans. We haven't necessarily got a marketing plan as such just yet. We've got some of the broader things underway. Podcasts, for instance, lots of the videos from our filming day being posted out on LinkedIn, but there's no kind of necessary cohesion or attention on which routes we're both taking when. So we thought about kind of the pillars that we want to attack, in a sense, marketing wise, how we're going to attack them and what we need to do. My biggest thing when it comes to marketing as well, we're an organic search agency that focuses in on audience first content. So we need to have content on our website. So that's one of the big core focuses for us, building out the website to have a blog section, careers section. And with both of those pieces, what happened last week, we hired someone. I felt like we need to actually build out our careers page and our careers development story more. So I'm currently writing a couple of blog posts that can go onto the website as well there. So I think we've done a fantastic job over the first month of business of building our brand and almost that of the agencies through the content we've put out on LinkedIn. However, it's that brand category affiliation, and it's the point that you made. It's very valid. We now need to push and focus our content more on the areas that we're looking to serve with our business model.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can I ask a question on that then? Which is,
Sure.
like, I'm in a slightly different headspace to you on that marketing plan, in a sense of, I'd say we have most of what you were saying there, but the only part we don't have is essentially the calendar. I would say last week we did a really good job essentially ironing out some of our frustrations with marketing historically, agencies, and in general when we see with our clients as well, which is when you start opening up the floor to marketing, or you ask people for contributions and things like that, what tends to happen is you then have a bunch of different people talking about a bunch of different stuff, and it becomes very unclear what that marketing message is. So we spent a lot of time building out, again, I'd say a framework, not a process, to, if you're creating a piece of content, like, what is that pillar? Does it fall into one of the 3 to 4 pillars that we want to talk about? In fact, let me just pull it up so we can go through it in a bit of detail. And then this does have a question to it. So we came up with pillars, right? So our pillars were organic search, delivery, team and culture, and then building, which would cover things like agency operations. Yeah. We then had a subcategory and a priority, which then went into a content map, which was the pillar, the subcategory, the title, who was owning it, the priority, most importantly to our audience first content, like who is it for, and then a few other bits and pieces. Like, I was really happy with that. So I would say we have 90% of what you were talking about. I'd say the only part that we don't have is the when, so essentially the content calendar. But you sound like you think we're further away from that, so I'd be interested to understand like the bits that you think are missing.
No, I don't think anything's necessarily missing. We've identified the gaps, and I think that the gaps are the delivery side, the B2B that e-commerce plays, and kind of what we would do around that. I think we've got it now on the marketing plan. It's just actually getting some of that content out. Fair enough. On the careers and development side, we need to get that stuff out, but at least some of our videos have talked about that more, and we've actually put those videos out on LinkedIn, on TikTok, and so on. That starts to spread that story for people potentially applying. But potentially businesses that we want to target, they don't actually know that we're fully aimed for. And this is actually something that you said last week, and I agree with it, and that's what I'm trying to relay here. I think we need to start focusing some of our efforts in the coming weeks around B2B and e-commerce plays as well to get that across. So it's not like we're not doing that. We've got the plan. I think you're right. It's the calendar of when we're going to attack that we need to sort out.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was again, this podcast is a good opportunity for us to catch up as well. We just wanted to understand like the bits that you felt we needed to do so we could make sure we got those in and we got through them. But yeah, if the next step on that is just essentially putting it into a calendar to diarize some of this stuff to give us deadlines to work towards, makes sense to me. We can chat back in next week to make sure that we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be like our target accounts list all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
But this time, because we're rocking and rolling, this is our full-time job. I'm a lot more confident that we'll get commitments done quicker. Okay, so unless there's anything else on the building front?
Not massively. I think you have it as a question mark at the moment, just to say, I guess it was like, can we talk about it?
Pretty much.
I'd say we can drop a little teaser to it, which is we've had a couple of initial conversations in terms of you and I potentially getting involved with some marketing students at Warwick University. So work that you and I have both done before, and maybe formalizing it a little bit more. The reason I'm thinking of dropping that little teaser here is more just so I don't forget an idea, but so we can go back and listen to this and the idea, which is our point of contact at Warwick University obviously spends a lot of time with young people looking to start their careers in marketing. So he may be a very good person to have on the podcast to talk more about the recruitment side of things and, you know, what younger people are looking for when they look for employers, and vice versa, like what employers should think about when they're considering employing younger people with, I guess, limited experience into their businesses and stuff like that. So just putting it out there so I don't forget it, really.
Absolutely. I agree, though. That's a power of connections. I've spoken about that in the past, but it's a good one, and it's a good opportunity for us. And again, hopefully that will give us plenty of material as well to market our careers and kind of growth side there. So more of that when things are more formalized. We'll let everyone on this pod know about that, but it's another track of work that's interesting, exciting, and you never know when these kind of opportunities come and go. So perfect. On to our favorite segment of the podcast, topic to the table, not table to the topic, like I usually say. And in honor of Harry making a sale, I thought I would take the turn this week. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go for it. I'm interested to see what you have to say.
Perfect. Well, I don't know whether this is a plug, but I'm going to try and start it with a bit of kind of the context around why, maybe, like, because the outreach for this blog will probably be launched way before this podcast comes out. But at least people listening back to this podcast will understand and know that there's this blog post there for you, ready and waiting. Have a read, send me questions as well. So for a while now, leading a team at the old agency, and now that we've hiring people as well, I've always noticed that kind of juniors in the industry are so kind of almost hell-bent on learning absolutely everything they can on the marketing channel that they forget about the almost, I don't like calling it softer skills. I saw some companies refer to them as real skills. They let that kind of fall away a little bit because they're so hell-bent on knowing everything there is to know about paid media, about SEO, about marketing automation. That, yeah, okay, great. You understand the premise, but actually if you haven't got that real world experience, and the ability to talk to clients as well, you can have all the knowledge, but if you can't get that work done and on the site and actually working for the client, there's no point in that knowledge whatsoever. So it needs to be a real mix of knowledge and skills. And I just thought about that, especially with some of the people that we talked to recently for our hiring. We need to have a resource like that's easy and quick, that doesn't kind of like, oh, everyone should know that. That's a simple bit of like common sense in a way, but we know common sense is difficult for people if you haven't heard it or had to experience it. We know people, for instance, in some agencies, the account managers or the strategists actually kind of talk to the clients and do all the work. And, you've got SEO specialists who know everything about SEO, but that's only part of the job and part of the way that they can get better. So I just thought I'd write up loads of tips that I've kind of been storing up over the time. So I've got 102. I've got 102 because I don't like 100 or 101 when you see those listicles. So I've got 102. And then you, as the marketing genius behind 1225, suggested, why don't we ask other marketing leaders to contribute? And you can actually just make it a bigger list and just share it amongst people, make it more useful. So we outreach last week on LinkedIn, went through some key specific industry contacts and asked them to contribute. I probably had 6 or 7 people come back to me saying, yeah, I'll get that done. So far, I haven't had any responses, but again, hoping that we'll get those responses through soon. So, and I think it's something as well that we can kind of build over time as well, just refresh it and add the latest tips to it. And if any new tips come in, maybe we could have a segment on the podcast about tips for being a better consultant. It's almost a resource for 1225 to help us scale and make people better, because we are going to be employing juniors who want to make that step up. And this just gives them a quick checklist. And I hope that's kind of explained it quite well, and kind of will be a really good resource in a few months when this launches. It should be on the website by then. Yeah,
I mean, I'm excited to see it come together. Obviously, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. I do think, well, you've been working on it for a lot longer than that, and 102 is a tough number to hit. But I think it's going to be a great resource for people. And I think you spoke about it there, saying that I think this will be good for juniors, but I'd say it's beyond that as well, in the sense of we spent the last 6 years employing consultants, senior consultants, and beyond, and all of us, guilty is probably the wrong word, but every now and then we all have like gaps that we need to fill, or we let certain things drop as we get busy or whatever it may be. And I think having that resource to like check yourself against as well will be really powerful. So yeah, excited to see it come together. I do think there's going to be another great piece that we'll probably follow up with some clients involved, but I don't want to give too much away there. But yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another point to it as well in terms of, obviously, it's 102 tips. I'm not expecting every client to go work through the 102 tips and tick them off and, I'm so much better. But if they get 2 or 3 things, 2 or 3 takeaways out of this blog post, that will make them 2-3% better potentially. And that helps them, that helps their agency, helps the industry, helps build trust in the industry, helps us all get better as well. So that's the whole reason for doing it. So yeah, that's my topic to the table.
I like it. Very, very, very good. All right, let's move on. I got a new section to bring to the podcast, and this is, I guess, 2 reasons for it. One of which is I have seen something today and I'm very curious about it, so I want to talk to you. And the second part comes back to what you're saying from a marketing perspective, which is we need to focus on showcasing ourselves as people who are like incredibly passionate about organic search and understand it, hopefully deeply. But that just, I've added hopefully there because it sounds a bit braggy. But it's an industry we've been involved in for a long time, and it's experiencing a huge amount of change at the moment. And the thing that I want to talk about in this section, which I'm calling organic search, is I've seen a few people post on LinkedIn today about the fact that OpenAI have now essentially released a user agent that you can put in the Robots.txt file of your site to stop OpenAI crawling your site, training its AI for ChatGPT and things like that. And everyone is celebrating that. And I can't understand why, and I don't know if I am missing something, if I'm being arrogant to it or whatnot. But let me explain my thinking to this, which is I understand that there is an argument to say that if tools like ChatGPT and others are crawling your site to educate themselves, to then be able to provide better answers to users, they're essentially like stealing something from you, or maybe not to that regard, but essentially there's some kind of, benefit one way there. I can semi understand that, but that seems like a very insular and to a point tunnel visioned way of looking at it. Surely the other way of looking at that is like ChatGPT and others at the moment are training themselves. And one of the biggest drawbacks at the moment of something like ChatGPT is it isn't able to cite sources or isn't able to give you links out. I'm 95% certain that's going to change, right? Like if ChatGPT wants to be this essentially conductor of search moving forward, taking market share away from Google, whatever it may be, it's going to have to provide links out to deeper context and contextualization and things like that. Surely you'd want to be at the forefront of that in the sense of, well, if OpenAI is finding my content useful, one, probably a great indicator that my audience will be finding my content useful as well. But 2, like they may end up linking to me at some point or referencing me as a source, which will therefore building my brand category affiliation, building my authority and things like that. So I am struggling to understand, unless somebody can give me a very good practical reason why would you want to stop OpenAI from crawling your website?
It's a great question. No, I'm not going to say it. I was going to say it depends, but for me, my initial thought, about all of this is the fact that it's probably a better thing that OpenAI can search it, because you never know as well. There might be a tie-up in the future. Google might flip and use some of OpenAI's stuff. So it's like you said, it's another source to find your information. Why stop it? If you put your content out on Twitter, on social media, OpenAI might be surfing and crawling those sites as well. So it could find your content anyway. And some agencies aren't going to stop it from using their content or sites even. So it's almost like if everyone does it, it will get better. And it's one of those, I don't think anyone loses out necessarily, because people will use ChatGPT if they want to use it and learn from it, you might as well make it better anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Like, that's where I'm at the minute. I do think there's potentially, I need to do some reading on it. Like I said, at the minute, all I've seen is a couple of LinkedIn posts. And of the sites that we manage, we haven't seen any real negative repercussions of it at the moment. So maybe some of this is just ignorance. And potentially there is something around like the usage that ChatGPT has to do to crawl a site impacts server volumes or something. I don't know. But yeah, my initial thoughts on this were I can't necessarily understand why you would want to do so and why it was being so wildly celebrated by the SEO community at the minute. But I'll do some research and potentially report back next week.
Nice. It does seem a bit protective of people. It's like, oh, okay, great, I can keep doing this. But also, how big of an impact, we don't know yet what it's going to do or how it's going to operate. I mean, just simple facts in the back of my mind, like SEO is pretty much for everyone at the minute. Like my mom wouldn't use ChatGPT, so the information on there is pointless. And again, content. It comes down to content. Original content made by humans for humans is going to outwit and outplay a model like ChatGPT any day of the week.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, like you said, I think we understand that it's something that's going to become more prevalent in the way people search, the way people interact with machines and stuff like that. It's all changing. And for me, like my stance on this at the moment is, well, if we can play a part in that and potentially see some benefits off the back of it 1, 2, 5 years down the line, it feels like a sensible thing to do. But like I said, I potentially not as informed as I should be based on reading those LinkedIn articles. So I'll go away and do a bit more reading.
Yeah, I get it. It's just an initial reaction, but I think it's human nature sometimes, and it's casting our mind back to topic to the table. Embrace change, learn to adapt with change, rather than kind of try and keep it at arm's length. So that's my initial response. Perfect. Weekly commitments. So final segment. So this is the look ahead to next week. Harry, what have you got on your plate? I say next week, this week.
Yeah, it's this week really, but sorry. I was getting distracted. I can just see on the camera, I've got one little rogue thread in my collar here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's just bugging me. Anyway, so to your actual point around weekly commitments. So there's a lot going on. I've got an employment contract to sort, so I need to get on that. I decided to fully embrace the world of TikTok and have a content calendar. Well, not content calendar, but I've got a content roadmap in terms of TikTok videos that need filming, produced, edited, and then uploaded. I also need to understand what I'm doing wrong on the 1225 page. We seem to be growing a lot of traction, which was great. And then the last couple of videos are completely bombed. So I need to look into that a bit more. So a lot of TikTok work, and then really ramping up on sales outreach. Like you said, we've made a hire, maybe 2. And as a result of that, we need to make sure we're really accelerating on the sales front. So yeah, ramping up on sales outreach as well.
For me, it's obviously a lot of client delivery at the minute, just making sure that I stay ahead of it because we are so busy. I've got a little bit of time off in the next couple of weeks up as well. So get ahead of that delivery, make sure everything's okay with the clients that we've got. Like I said before, induction plan, and then starting to draft the staff handbook, which I'll try and attempt to make it the shortest staff handbook in agency history if I can. I'm sure, knowing me and the way that I start to just get into the flow, it will turn out to be war and peace, but I'll try and keep it short, concise, and almost just bullet points. I might just do 102 pointers for the staff handbook. How's that?
I see the new trend that's going to materialize, which is everything's going to be 102. But I do think there's something that we could do in terms of the handbook, and we have to look at this from an accessibility perspective as well. But we could do some in video and visual format, like an audio format and stuff like that as well.
I like it.
That's something a little bit different. Same with the induction. But yeah, I think we've got a lot to get through, I think is the thing.
Right. I just had a picture suddenly of like me and you trying to create like an airline safety video as our induction video. Can you imagine?
Mate, that is such a good idea, though. That's a quality idea.
Let's do that. Give them a tour of our office space and do it that way.
You get some inflatable life jackets, though. That would be funny.
Mate, we can plan all of that. Let's get George back in it. He owes us a video. Let's
he literally said it himself today. He owes us a video. I'm not sure that's quite what he had in mind, but it's such a good idea. Oh, I want to do it now.
Let's do it. People will be like, yes, I made the right choice joining these two. They know what it's all about. The vibes. All about the vibes.
You did say you wanted to be Chief Vibes Officer.
Yeah, I don't want anything too stuffy. So, yeah, that'd be perfect for me.
Okay, nice. So scrap the rest of the weekly commitments. The only thing we're doing this week is doing an airline-style welcome video.
Exactly. The staff handbook has become a staff like script. I'm going to get screenwriting now. I can picture it now. It's going to go viral. There's your TikTok success right there.
I like it. It's such a good idea.
Brilliant. Well, with that bombshell, we'll leave it for this episode. Thank you for listening. And yeah, swing well, putt true. To help us build our audience, please like, share and subscribe. If you listened on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you watched us on YouTube, please leave a question or comment and we'll get back to you. Thank you.